Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly podcast about everything going on in Ultimate. I'm Ultiworld Senior Editor Keith Rayner, and I'm joined today by Editor Edward Stevens, who's been heading up our college coverage and is a frequent guest on the show, a friend of the show, if you will. Edward, glad to have you on in Charlie's stead. How have you been? How you been doing? What's been going on in your world this past weekend?
I don't think it's any surprise. First off, thanks for having me again and for welcoming into the official Inner Circle, capital F, Friends of the Show world. I appreciate it. It's been on my hopes and dreams list, my Pinterest board for a long time. So thank you for that. But no surprise that a big chunk of my weekend was spent watching College Ultimate. A, because I love it, and B, because I need to help stay up to date because there was a ton going on. But I did make it away briefly. A friend of mine was turning 40 this week and had a huge blowout karaoke party on Saturday night. So I made it out to that. Got a little singing and dancing in there.
I feel like you're kind of a karaoke fiend. Like when I think of Edward, I think of being an ultimate sicko, being an a ultimate sicko, like above the level for ultimate. But I also think you're kind of a karaoke head. I have very little karaoke background. I think I've sang karaoke like twice, and so I don't know a ton about the karaoke world. But Cody Mills was schooling me the last time that I saw him in the ways of karaoke, like song selection and stuff. What's your tips? Like what's the best you can pull out for karaoke?
Wow, I don't know if I can go toe to toe with Cody. That man is an expert in everything. I don't know if there's anything he's ever taken his hand to that he hasn't mastered within 6 months. So shout out Cody Mills on that. But yeah, I mean, rules for selecting a good karaoke song, obviously, and this is demographic of the group dependent. But if you're in a private karaoke setting, like where you've rented a room and it's all among friends, you really want something that everybody feels like they can participate in, whether it's as like the feature singer. Some people want to be that feature singer, or some other way. So we had huge success, and neither of these were my picks, but we had huge success with Harry Belafonte's Jump the Line. We had a huge conga line going, and everybody was playing tambourines and shouting and blowing on noisemakers. So that was pretty old. And then on a slightly newer song, surprising massive hit was Spice Up Your Life from the Spice Girls' second album, Spice World. Was pretty huge. And part of that was because of the age of the demographic, but that was a big one. Last one was, this was one of my picks, and I was like the lead on this, but I got everybody involved. Kiss from a Rose, lots of areas for people to add
Yeah.
extra like oohs and ahs and like get into it. That was a good time.
I'm down with that, and that aligns with what Cody told me, which was I feel like I made the novice mistake, which is like thinking about, okay, what can I sing and sound good, and that's really not. You need to be thinking about what can you sing with the audience. It's like gotta engage them. Like, are you gonna have a big dead moment in the song where it's instrumental, and like, are you prepared to carry the audience through that moment? And I was like, I never thought about that in song selection. So this is
um,
all helpful tips for the day in which I'm put on the spot.
on that note, you're right. You got to watch out for those dead times. This was years ago in my early 20s. I was out in Philadelphia at a karaoke night, and somebody started singing Billy Joel's Piano Man. This was not a private thing. This was like one person gets up on the stage, and that song is great for the singing. The crowd sings along, but if you know the song, you know there is a big dead harmonica solo in the middle of it. And I was like, what's this guy gonna do? And he's dressed up, he's singing the song great, but he's got this instrumental break lurking. He whips out a harmonica and plays the entire thing
I was just
himself.
gonna say you
Killed
got to
it.
whip out the harmonica, right? Yeah,
Yep.
that's if you're prepared for it though, it could be your moment. So chat if you got some great suggestions or just want to highlight your favorite karaoke song, go ahead and drop it in. We do have a lot to get to today. As Edward mentioned, big weekend this past weekend in college with Queen City Tune Up out east, and then Prez taking place out west. So big weekend for top level teams across the country. I'm sure there'll be some bid implications, definitely some surprising stories. We also got the World Games second cut list. So we found out which players are still in the running to make the final 14 for the U.S. national team. So we got to take our time to chew on that a little bit. A couple other things to get to as well. But before we do all that, we got to do our trivia question of the week. All right, Edward, time to find out what kind of college ultimate sicko you really are here. We're gonna do some guess the team name. I feel like the people love this. There you go, there you go. Got to be prepared. All right, so I've got
What am I thinking, Cap?
10 college 10 colleges here, and you got to try and figure out what their team name is. I've got 5 teams from the women's division, 5 from the men's division lined up for you, and this is not easy mode. This is not easy mode. So if you're playing along at home, you gotta flash some expertise if you want to come away with the trophy here. Producer Lindsay, do we have the 10 teams? Our women's division teams first. All right. So Edward, we're starting in the women's division. Maybe five schools. You think you got anything for any of these? What do you got?
Okay.
I told you it's not easy mode.
No, we are on hard mode today. I 100% do not know MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I am going to guess that they are called the Mittens. Little pun on the name, but I've just come up with that on my own. I do not know what they're called.
All right, run through all 5, and then I'll come back for you. But you were right. MIT has MIT in the name. So did you get it right? We'll find out.
Okay. All right. Mount Holyoke. I'm going to go with the Holy Fools. Shout out to ancient Russian cultural touchstones there. I also don't know that one, if it's not clear. Iowa State. I know I should know. Iowa is Saucy Nancy. What is Iowa State? I'm lost there. I'm going to call them the Corn Duskers. Just for fun. Or you know what? No, I'm calling them Soylent Green for the soybean industry in Iowa. Yale.
All right,
1 for 5. Ramona Quimby. Got Yale all day. Shout out Beverly Cleary's classic novels of childhood. And Illinois, I have to say, I'm lost. Keith, you broke me with this trivia question.
Wow. I thought there would be a couple here that would be besides Ramona that might feel familiar to you. I'm surprised that you did. I'm not surprised that you struggled with a couple of these, but all of them I was a bit surprised by. Especially Iowa State. There was once upon a time. I know. I gotta say they've fallen away from the national picture, but Iowa State, woman scorned, and that's singular woman scorned.
I knew
That's
that.
a very unique name in the landscape. Can you let's take a look at the answers here. You were, like I mentioned, you were right that MIT has MIT in there. They're Smite. Mount Holyoke is Daisy Chain. I think they may have been
I knew that one
sisters,
too.
like
Stupid.
10 years ago, and they switched to Daisy Chain. Woman Scorned, Ramona, which you knew is from Beverly Cleary books. I thought until like, I don't know, like 3 years ago that it was like a political figure that I wasn't familiar with. But it is Ramona Quimby from those Beverly Cleary books. And Illinois Menace. How about
All right,
let's see if you can do any better on the men's division side.
I just want to shout out. I should have gotten both Iowa State and Mount Holyoke. I knew those in the back of my brain, but I think Daisy Chain is one of the best team names in college ultimate. That's a great team name.
It is obviously way like if I gave you these to pair, I think you would have gotten them really fast. Like it's a lot harder when you're just like, here's the school, what's the team name, and even ones that you don't you remember once they're said, but it's hard to think of them on the spot.
Oh, Iowa State does have corn in the word scorned.
You are right. You are right.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Well, maybe we'll do better in the men's division. We'll queue up our five schools. We've got Carnegie Mellon, San Jose State, Arizona State, Washington B. I gave you this is kind of your I know you like crossword puzzles. So this is like enough context about Washington to try and uh come up with a potential B team name, even if you don't actually know the team name. And Bryant. So what do you got for these five?
I fear this is going to be another 1 for 5 setup for me. I might get two, but I know Carnegie Mellon is Mr. Yuck. Jasper Tom, if you're watching, uh, we got you. San Jose State. I
That is
learned
a deep
recently
cut.
that is a deep cut. San Diego State is the Federales, which is another one of the
That's right.
top names in all of college ultimate. I don't think I know San Jose State. Arizona State, I should know, and I don't. Washington B. Here's the one that I can like work my way towards. You say, um, I'm gonna say that they are the Shadow Finders. Sort of goes hand in hand with the Sun Dodgers.
Got it.
And Bryant, have to be completely honest, I have never heard of that institution in my life. But shout
They're
out Bryant wherever
D3
you are. Hope you're
school.
playing great ultimate.
I think Bryant was like in D3 semis once. They're for a little there were like 2 or 3 years where they were, a top 10 team in D3 men's division. But I knew that would be a tough one. The crowd's helping you out here. Mr. Yuck, they got Arizona State. They are not named after the sports drink. They came first, but they are prime. So the Max Charles going with the same line of thought for Washington B as you. They said if Washington A is the Sun Dodgers, then maybe B is the Moon Catchers. What do you think? Moon
Ooh,
Catchers
that's so
better than
good.
Shadow Finders? If they're not the Moon Catchers, they should be. But that maybe they'll take that under advisement. San Jose State. We can go ahead and show the results here. Megabyte
I like that.
Megabyte. That is an extremely deep cut. Bryant Craze and the Undodgers for Washington B, to my knowledge. Uh, B team. The art of the B team name is a beautiful thing in Ultimate. A great tradition here. So,
Mm.
folks at home, I'm wondering how you did. If you got above 4, I think you're sicko. Like, and we love you for it. We love you for it.
You got above 1.5, you're a sicko.
That's I wonder how our resident team name expert Theo would do on this. This was hard today. I thought I'd really ratchet it up because I know Charlie was getting one out of those. I feel like he was getting Mr. Yuck, and that was it.
This thinking cap was trash.
Sorry, thinking cap. Well, we can move on to from the thinking cap to more of the sorting hat as we go to talk about the World Games second cut here. Down to 34 players remaining for the U.S. national team that'll represent the U.S. at the World Games. Many of the returners making the second cut. One that was missing. I'm sure that's going to be one of the things that we talk about. In fact, let's just start there. Jimmy Mickle, the only returner who was trying out, including all of the reserves from last time, who was not called back. Your thoughts on Jimmy Mickle not getting the call here?
I think it is based on what I saw during last club season and at the WUC tryouts that I attended. Uh, I think it is justified. Every single one of the greatest players of all time in any sport eventually isn't there at that level anymore. I hope that's not true with Jimmy, but based on what I saw with my own eyes last year, it is an unfortunate reality that if you are cutting to create a team of the 14 best players in the country. I really think he was maybe not in the running. That I wasn't at the tryout. I have no idea how he played. We didn't have a reporter there. We will, by the way, have a reporter at the second tryout who will give a report with all kinds of details about how people played and what he feels like the coaches were looking for. That's my that's my big thought there. And otherwise, it seems as though the coaches have kind of made their decisions from a male matching handler point of view. Uh, Mac Hecht didn't make the cut either. Alex Atkins didn't make the cut. It seems like they are going to focus either on female matching handlers or potentially, if he plays well enough, Johnny Malks, and that decision just had to be made.
I someone in our Discord posited the idea that uh that this might be an implication between, no Mac Hecht and no Jimmy Mickle, that the team is not necessarily looking for a male matching player to like center the disc to and hold it for a long time or to get back every reset, and may move towards a more fluid offense that puts a lot of different players in different positions and feels a little bit more like what Truck Stop has popularized in the men's division. I don't know if that's accurate, but it's a reasonable theory based on the group here. Obviously, all of these players are capable of throwing, and I think that we saw last cycle players who I would think of as cutters moving into the backfield more frequently. Someone like Dylan Freechild is not someone I think of getting the disc center to him a lot, but I think that role is part of what he played for the team last year. They also do have a capable group of women matching players to pick from who could handle that workload. So I am curious to see how things shake out from here. But this is not an environment that I feel like leads to Jimmy Mickle's strengths at this point in his career. Like this is not the place I think that is going to make him the most successful. Looking at the list in its entirety, to you, what was your biggest surprise? Like what were you like? Either the missing name or the name that you saw on there, you're like, I did not see that. What shocked you when you looked at this list?
Yeah, a few things caught my eye. There were the expected. You expect Chris Kotcher and Claire Trope to make the next cut. You expect Rafi Hayes and Cami Groom, even though they weren't on the last World Games team, to make the cut. So that was no surprise whatsoever. But on the actual surprise side, I don't think, as much as Charlie has been stumping for him, I'm not sure I realized that Marquez Brownlee was going to play well enough to make the list. Same with Eli Kearns. I was a little shocked to see that name on the next cut list. I'm very pleased and happy but a little surprised to see Liv Player as well. The Boston Sprocket defensive ace. So great to see her on there. And then exclusion wise, that was where the big shockers were. I couldn't believe I was not seeing Dina Elimelech, or for me, Quinn Finer was almost as big a surprise on the male matching side. What about you?
I mean, you lined up pretty much most of we're very aligned on our surprises. Dina and Quinn are two of the exclusions I was the most surprised by. I drafted Quinn when Charlie and I did our team draft. Dina was like not a lock by any means, but I think was in that territory in some eyes. It's just a great two-way player who's been on the rise, is like right in the prime of her career. And to not see her name there, it was definitely a surprise for me. And the inclusions you mentioned, certainly Liv Player is coming off of two really, really strong club seasons. So has a ton of momentum in her favor. And was somebody who I heard was playing really well at the tryouts. So in that sense, not a surprise, but take me back to when the initial tryout list was announced. And Liv Player was not somebody who was going to be on my radar to potentially make the top 14. And now I think it's a really live shot. I mean, obviously, if you're going to this tryout at this point, you're definitely live to make the team. They're not taking anybody to this last 34 because they think you're going to make the tryouts better. They're taking you because they think you have what it takes to be in the top 14. So definitely surprising. Charlie, you mentioned he's been stumping for Marquez, but I mean, if I feel like if you rewind to the beginning of the club season, like would people have said Marquez was one of the best 7 players on Pony going into last club season, we saw during the year what he could do. And I think he started to show his game has grown a ton. But
Hmm.
definitely a player that, I think has really rocketed up people's estimation of him over this time period. Um,
He does so
Antoine
many
Davis
of like the smaller
Holzmeyer
things
also getting the
right.
call. Yeah, he does. I mean,
Like his
he
mark is
his
elite. His pulling is phenomenal. He breaks the mark with ease, and yeah, he'll whip out a big hammer or two too. So it's I guess you can see it with Marcus. All the fundamentals are so in place with him that if his like big play stuff is on a little bit, you're like, oh, of course, it makes perfect sense.
and I actually think there's some parallels with Brownlee and Player. These are people who I think you would probably have marked as really strong defenders who don't have as well-rounded offensive games at the elite club level, like at this point. Uh, but then who during this club season showed that was not the case and that they have evolved that parts of their game. And seeing both of them get a lot more offensive reps and be bigger parts of their respective offenses on teams that ended up being really successful, I think probably opened some eyes to what those players could do, which is part of what's awesome about the Rogan's process is getting to see these players compete in this environment and learning about like, okay, once you unmarry players from their own team environments where you get to know them, how do they perform? So that's definitely interesting. Another player who I think we're not surprised after the club season, but if you go back to the beginning of the club season, is KJ Kirsten Johnson from San Francisco Fury. I don't think a lot of people would have had her as being somebody who is in the running, not to get picked over like a teammate like Dina Alamelik, but then KJ was awesome during the club season, and I think that changed a lot of people's perception of what could be her potential contributions. Uh, this is definitely an interesting group. Also got to mention the youngsters from UNC. Another player who's a surprise exclusion on mine was a player I stumped for. During I can't even remember now if in my bold predictions I just picked him to make the team or if I ended up on Abby Hecko. But I was vacillating back and forth between Abby Hecko and John Randolph. Jr. does not get the call for the top 34, but a different young player from like kind of the same generation, Ben Dameron, does. And Don Colton also making the cut, along with Henry Yang, who's another one of the younger players on the list. But Ben Dameron's still an active college player, who's just cutting it up at Queen City Tune Up, and also is still in the running for this group, along with Abby Hecko's another one of the young players who's in this group. So
Yeah,
very
there's a
interesting to
lot
see
of
these
chatter,
youngsters
Keith.
too.
There's a lot of chatter that this is actually a secret ploy on the part of the Team USA coaching staff to hamstring UNC at Smoky Mountain Invite, where the tournament and the second tryout coincide. So that's really the reason Ben's incredible. He's a do everything, absolute fireball out there. I wanted to
Yeah,
second your praise of KJ as well. Kirsten Johnson was maybe Fury's best player at nationals, depending on the game. Like tremendous. So love. She's my dark horse candidate to make the team.
fascinating group of potential tryouts here. I believe producer Lindsay Sue ended up with like either 3.5 or 4.5 as the line for returners, and maybe not looking good going into this tryout with so many returners on the list. I think, and report from what I heard from folks who were at tryouts playing well. So I heard that the returners mostly stood out in a positive way. So I think that we could be looking at a fairly returner heavy group. I don't know if that's like, I don't know how much they want to think about what is the next generation going to look like? Are they just expecting that to kind of come out in the wash? Is there going to be some attention paid to that? And they want to make sure that someone who's going to potentially be in the running for the next cycle is on this team. There's certainly a lot of players in the pool who could be eligible to do that, but uh, it's definitely a curiosity. Also, should mention Anna Thompson. I believe did not play at tryouts, but did get the call back. I think that's right. But I hope that she's healthy because I think that she's a player who a lot of us feel like is as close to a lock as you can be without being a returner, uh, especially if she's going to be healthy. But that's something you have to take into consideration when you're making this team because you don't get a lot of subs. Even though I still think you should be able to take your reserves to the tournament and then swap them in if somebody can't play. I want to see 14 great players. I don't necessarily care they're the 14 players you brought with you, but uh, that's neither here nor there.
My last thought is that the dream of having brothers on the team is still alive. Shout out Michael and Henry Ing, both making the cut. We'll I don't know, odds against anybody making the last cut are just immense. It's so talented throughout, but yeah, could have brothers out there. That would be very cool.
Maybe could be the first siblings to ever even get to this point in the trial. I mean, I guess we know they are the first siblings to ever get to this point in the trial because they've only been doing this for 2 cycles. But I don't even know if we've had siblings like that have been in consideration late in the process before. So already
This
breaking
is
records.
this is our plan to beat the Cardenases.
We had to get our own sibling juju going. So why don't we follow Ben Dameron's lead and go from World Games to Queen City Tune Up and talk about what was going on over in Carolina this weekend, and we can start in Ben Dameron's division because he helped UNC win the men's division at Queen City Tune Up over exactly who you expected. You know, Charlie and I were like, who's going to make the finals? Is it WashU? Is it Penn State? Wrong. It's South Carolina. It's the win over WashU in semis on Universe. Super windy day. Weather, as we noted going into the tournament, weather ended up being a big factor. It reshaped both the tournaments. But UNC, an absolutely dominant showing at this tournament, including in the final, where they wrecked South Carolina. They're far stronger in the wind. South Carolina had trouble moving the disc really at all. North Carolina had a Callahan, almost 2, if not more potential ones on the table. And I think they gave up like 18 points, 17 points over the course of the tournament in 6 games. So Dark Side dominating throughout the tournament. I guess maybe putting people back on notice that the Carolina kickoff might have been a blip, not necessarily something to worry about.
Yeah, shout out Georgia Tech Tribe for giving North Carolina a wake up call. They played they played Queen City like a horse that had just gotten the spur. Um, I I wasn't super shaken by the Carolina kickoff loss, but any doubts I had about whether North Carolina are still at least probably a semis team completely erased by their results here. They will finally get like a full slate, weather permitting, of top tier competition games where we really get a sense of where they stack up as a whole group at Smoky Mountain Invite. But for now, I mean, Josh Singleton apparently looked great. Grayson Trowbridge apparently looked great. Somebody in the Discord said having Eli Freed on the O line is just not fair, and it's hard to disagree with that. Sam Redenbow apparently took a big step forward. This was Darkside's weekend. Huge performance.
What was your biggest takeaway from this tournament? And if it was just that, what we just went over, then we can move on to the next question. But what was your biggest takeaway from QCTU in the men's division?
That was my biggest takeaway. Just that North Carolina are not going anywhere as one of the teams that you have to go through to win a championship in this division.
What would you say are the next key implications nationally and regionally from this tournament? What are the next couple of things that you think you would mark as key implicators?
I think that South Carolina did the Atlantic Coast a huge favor. This is their second tournament final in a row, but that win over WashU is so clutch. WashU did a bunch of like bid earning type things at Florida warm up to try to help the South Central get 3 bids, and then they come up here and lay a little bit of an egg. Not to say that South Carolina are bad, but WashU put up the same number of points against South Carolina as they did against BYU, and BYU are 100% one of the best teams in the country. And I'm not sure I would say that about South Carolina yet. No offense, guys, but that 11-2 scoreline in the final, I think, speaks more about where you are in terms of like actual like top tier. And the AC is looking a lot stronger, and the South Central is looking a little shakier to have like enough bids to feel like everybody could get strength bids come regionals.
for me, if I'm looking at a bigger picture here, I think I'm a little worried about the tier two teams in the national picture right now. Teams like Penn State and WashU, who are like, back end top 10, somewhere between that and top 18 kind of teams, something like that. And they were challenged by some of the teams in the field, and they did not stand up against the likes of UNC or in WashU's case, even South Carolina. So I think that there's a little to be worried about there. I think you're going to see teams be a little inconsistent. It was Penn State's first tournament. It was WashU's second or third. So maybe there's something to be said for Penn State getting a little grace at this point in the year, but it's definitely something I want to keep an eye on. But you're right about South Carolina. Great results for the AC, and I thought North Carolina State also put in some good work for the AC. I actually think both of those teams are slated to play at Eastern's qualifiers,
Hmm.
also something to monitor. Anything under the radar for you from this tournament? What's your under the radar observation?
It's not a complete observation just because it's so baffling, but we saw the way this tournament worked was they, because of the intense rain, they had to make multiple separate field sites work. Shout out to the TDs for getting games in this weekend. Incredible work to have the backup plan implemented, but it meant that there were 5 pools. And the way they decided who made semis, there were no quarters, was that it was just point differential among the pool winners. And so the team that lost out were absolute surprises. 16 seed Chicago Fission. They've had Grant Harris. I think he's in his 3rd year now, but he's been with him for a while. He's a Seattle area player and played sockeye last year in club. He and the rest of the Chicago team are good, and they won out their pool. Had to play in the 5th place bracket, and they made the 5th place final. And you think that in a rematch against Tufts, who they had already beaten, that they were probably going to win and certainly going to be competitive. If they were going to lose, it was going to be within 1 or 2 goals. They got bageled 11-0. We don't know
Shocking.
officially, but I saw the Tufts Twitter and they were, tweeting every point and like updating scores. And so it seems like it's maybe like a real result. I have no idea. And I don't know what this means for the Great Lakes. If there's decent weather, can Chicago give Michigan a run for their money? Maybe. I have no idea. But that was like notable at the tournament for sure.
Yeah, Tufts coach Gene Bonacorsi was in our Discord and verified that that was a real result. They played the full game and there was no shenanigans. I that's got to be a real rarity. I think with all the college games that have ever been played, I'm sure that's happened before that a team lost in their first game against a team and then bageled them later. But that is wild stuff. It's a shocking enough story that Chicago came in and went 3-0 in probably the hardest pool. Like William and Mary was went 0-3 in that pool, and they were kind of good. So that may have been the toughest pool overall. Rip to the early Maryland hype, which maybe they can earn it back at qualifiers. But Chicago going 3-0 would have been shocking enough. But then also to turn around and have that result with Tufts, definitely the under the radar thing to watch. Uh, I do want to say that I think that the next biggest one is probably Maryland going 1-2 in pool play and like ultimately having kind of a disappointing showing when there have been a little bit of hype. Yeah, they beat Tennessee and William and Mary both on Universe, and they beat Yale in consolation play. But I think they had a little hype when we found out Isaac Lee was going to be there. They still have time to build things together. I'm not writing them off, but I think the potential for them to be like a team that feels like a clear nationals team come regional time is kind of gone. They will be a team in the mix at what should be a crazy AC. Please let that region get 2 bids. I need it. If it's a 1 bid region, I'm going to be so mad because
We've had
I
some
need the spice.
classic Atlantic Coast regional games during the multiple bid years the last 3 times. I mean, the UNC Charlotte, NC State, UNC Wilmington stuff last year was awesome. Nobody can ever forget the Maryland Georgetown years a few years ago. That is a great bracket when there are multiple bids on the table.
Yeah. Also, I've I have aired for getting hyped about UNC Wilmington this year. That's my mistake. Also, shout out to Maxwell Devine on Chicago. He's from Hybrid and used to play for Ohio State. Another nice pickup. Maybe that combo with him and Grant Harris is enough to make them a little bit of a threat in the Great Lakes. Two big Great Lakes. Is it even possible? I don't even know that's possible, but they might not allow it. If it comes to pass, then we might have to rig it so that can't happen.
Mm.
So how about in the women's division in Queensy? A little bit of a stronger field in the women's division, but in the end, Tufts getting the win in the final. They got the upwind break powered by Leah Schwartz, of course, to get the win over Carleton. But the top four making it all the way to the semifinals. Although you noted part of that comes from that odd format, 5 pools, and one team getting left out on the tiebreaker, so to speak. What's your biggest takeaway from Queen City Tune Up in the women's division, Edward?
All right, I'm gonna wrap in a little pat on the back to myself with this because just before games started on Saturday morning, uh, or no, I can't remember if it was Saturday morning or Sunday morning. I was in the Discord and the live Ultimate channel where we were always chatting about Frisbee games that are happening and just bantering with each other live and getting the reporting from our reporters. And right before play started, I said, I think Ewo are going to prove that they are better than we realized. And I think it was at that point that they put the smackdown on 4-time defending champions UNC Pleiades. And then as Scott Dunham, who has, a grasp of the women's division to rival anyone, labeled Syzygy 3.5 point favorites in the final, then Tufts go out and take the early lead and hold out and just look comprehensively like the better team. And that's my big takeaway is that Tufts are. We'll get to the what might stand in their way when we talk about Prez Day, but Tufts are not just like a semis potential team. This is a championship potential team. I think they showed it with this performance this weekend.
A big hell yeah for me too, because I feel vindicated for my early season take that the group of title contending teams runs like at least 8 deep, and I feel like that feels very apt right now. Uh, there were teams that maybe it's 7, maybe Stanford feels like they've fallen out of that mix. I'm still not going to count them out. Maybe somebody else has played their way into that mix or still will, but right now it feels like, assuming that UBC isn't just going to walk the field, which I don't think is what's going to happen, then we have a really deep group of teams that are very good and all could beat each other. And Tufts is definitely in that group. I mean, you have to be high on them right now. The Leo Schwartz Emily Kemp duo is one of the best in the country, but that is not all that this team has to offer. I thought that Katie Gearing, Annabelle White, who made it on the Instagram with a big sky, Rianne Barrett, all played well. Jesse Chan. So this team, which is I think to be expected from what we've seen from them over the years, has some depth to them, but they have star power too. They're a well-drilled team. I think they're going to be getting better over the course of the year. So definitely the biggest takeaway for me as well. Any other key observations you have from this one?
It was just everything you just said, and I want to tack on Sophie Hankins' name as well. All of us knew that Emily Kemp and Leah Schwartz are two of the best in the biz right now, and I think the deepest sickos were ready for Annabelle White to take a leap. But what surprised me about Tufts was how much deeper they are than we realized, and what doesn't surprise me about Tufts is how well coached they are. We always shout out Stanford as having the best coaching year in year out in the women's division. I think Tufts are right there with them, or at worst, just a half step behind. This is a program that continually does all the right things. They come in with a game plan, they execute, and it is very clear that they are all working as one unit in a way that we don't always see from college teams early in the year.
Big continuity in that coaching staff. They've been a group for a long time, and I think that shows in this structural supremacy that Tufts has built throughout the years. So they deserve a lot of credit. And you're right, probably go under recognized based on how Tufts has finished throughout the years. And yeah, and Max Charles says in the chat, if Naturals is windy, give me Tufts. I mean, it's hard to argue against Lee Schwartz and her ability to throw. I mean, she's just so powerful, and that plays a big part in this team being successful in the wind. I mean, obviously, it has its uses even when it's not windy. I think Tufts is going to be a difficult team to try and take down, even in still conditions. But I think you're going to see them enhanced in the wind because they have maybe the most powerful thrower in the college game right now. Any under the radar takeaways to highlight for you from Queen City Tune Up Women's?
Well, I want to stay above the radar. Actually, I mean these teams are
Ooh,
so important. Yeah, I want to talk about. I mean the rest of this semifinal bracket, um, and and kind of like the other side, the dark cloud of the silver lining of shouting out Tufts's coaching preparation is that like that was one area where I felt that they were a clear step above what we saw from both Syzygy and Pleiades. It was astronomically a tough bracket, you know, um, and and Syzygy, I mean, the talent is undeniable, but the coordination wasn't necessarily there when they couldn't isolate Naomi Fina and Mia Beeman Weber in space, and when Chagall Gelfand didn't have like one big throw or big upline cut to win them the point, they were loose with the disc, and it was because it was like they were trying to think up options on the spot. They didn't have like a set plan to fall back on against Tufts, and I think it's kind of what did them in. North Carolina was a different issue. Their sets and their plays were great, but catching and throwing, catching especially, undid them in that semifinal game. And they've had a warm up tournament. Carleton have had a warm up tournament. Tufts were making their debut. I think they played like an unsanctioned couple of games a couple weeks ago, but you need to be catching the disc all the way into your hands on a windy, rainy day. You've got to look it in and reduce those unforced errors. And so I think there are things on the bulletin board for both Syzygy and Pleiades heading forward.
I think both teams need that kind of dynamic player to initiate play downfield for them. I think they feel a little like they're dependent on defensive strength and handler play, and are lacking in areas which they've lost talented players uh, from these teams. But UNC and Carleton both, I think, still kind of searching for who's going to be that person who it's like, okay, we're tapping the disc in and we're expecting you to get open and win your matchup and then make something happen. It's like super windy conditions. I think that I want to see more from both for making these sweeping verdicts or anything. But in Vermont, obviously undone a bit in that in their bracket matchups by a good Carleton team. But I don't think anybody's going to write them off either.
No, I don't think anybody's going to write them off. But I'm actually, unlike North Carolina and Syzygy, I'm actually worried about Vermont after this set of results.
Interesting.
Personally,
Tell me more.
yeah, I just don't understand how you have that collection of talent that has been together that many years. And I know a chunk of their best players are freshmen and sophomores, but a chunk of them are also juniors and seniors and fifth years. And I think we had better see them absolutely roll everybody at Commonwealth Cup this weekend. Because if they don't, then is their ceiling really as high as we expected it to be? They were my championship favorites, and they are like sixth or seventh in my championship personal like hierarchy that I'm keeping score on in my head right now.
I don't want to move on yet, just because I don't want to leave Michigan just totally untouched, just because they didn't make semis. They did what they were supposed to do in pool play. The most they gave up was 6 goals, and that was to Georgia. I think it was like, I don't know. I feel like it was like 8-6 or something, and then they rolled. So they were plus 31 on the tournament. They looked really good doing it. They they deserve their plaudits even if they didn't end up getting their chance to show it. And they were beating William and Mary, by the same kind of counts that we saw other teams beating them. So I think they looked very much like they were closer to that group that made semifinals than anybody else by a long shot. And are going to be around the top 10 kind of quality team and probably have a shot to beat one of these upper tier teams when they get the chance.
And I think they will get the chance. I've gotten a sneak peek of the Northwest Challenge team list. Mark your calendars for March, what is it, 21st, 22nd? I hope I didn't give you the wrong dates telling you to mark your calendars, folks. But Michigan and Vermont will both be there. Carleton will be there. North Carolina will be there, playing against all the best teams in the western half of the country. It's going to be lit. So Michigan will get their chance. It really stunk, though, seeing them go, plus 31 across 3 pool play games and still not be able to make the semis bracket here.
My quick under the radar thing. Rip the North Central. You got to do a lot to come out here and win a bid. I don't think Minnesota and Wisconsin put themselves in a position to do that. So it's looking like we're going to be looking at a 1-bid North Central with Carleton head of the class again. And William and Mary, are they now the new number 2 team in the AC? They might be. Pretty solid weekend. They beat both of those North Central teams. Well, I think American is playing this weekend, so they may be there. Maybe it's them. I don't know, but something to keep an eye on in the AC. Any final under the radar thoughts before we head into the break?
Just that Quincy Booth is still the truth. If you go back and watch the Michigan-Georgia game from Saturday, Quincy Booth was doing work. She scored or assisted on every goal that Georgia scored, and she was giving Kat McGuire fits on offense. Michigan, by far the stronger team top to bottom, but Quincy was playing out of her mind.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up our Queen City tune-up talk for right now. We're going to take a brief break, and when we get back, we'll be talking about Prez Day, what happened out there, and then getting you ready for this weekend in College Ultimate. Plus, we'll touch on the plays of the year, Ultra-Roll brackets. Exciting stuff going on over there. So stay with us. We'll be back with you in just a moment. Welcome back to Deep Look. Keith Rayner and Edward Stevens here back. And we're going to be jumping into some college coverage out at Prez Day, getting you the biggest stories from that tournament in just a moment. Want to look at our play of the year brackets. It is block of the year time right now, Edward. There were some big blocks in that highlight reel that you might have watched, the Queen City all-time highlights. You can check out the link in the description for more of that. And make sure to give the show a thumbs up. If you don't give the show a thumbs up, your team's going to be getting dunked on in the next highlight reel. I mean, that's how it works out. So if you don't want to have your team on the highlight reel multiple times in the wrong way, make sure to give it a thumbs up. But look at this block of the year bracket. We're into round 1, Edward. Charles Patterson taking down the catch of the year with that New Zealand hammer catch, the favorite going into the tournament in my eyes. Not a big surprise that it took down the win. when you're looking at this bracket, what do you think is like your clear like, or is there a clear winner? Is there a clear like this is the favorite right now?
Yes. Yes, Keith. Unfortunately, there is. And it gives me no pleasure to say that despite the fact that, we want to highlight a million great players in the sport of ours, Manu Cardenas just keeps making the block of the year. It's like every year with her. This is probably her third play that is the block of the year. And, shout out to Tessa Swinson, who made an incredible play. Shout out to the Vin Bowie and Tom Tulitt plays. If they get through like I think they will, we're going to get an incredible like matchup there. Nate Goff had the best block that I personally witnessed with my own two eyes last year, but it's Manu Cardenas on that, bait the deep throw and make the unbelievable slap down, feet kicking higher than the back of her head as she's horizontal play. I can't vote against it. That's my favorite, and I'm clicking Manu all the way through.
Interesting. I think I don't think you're wrong that Manu is the favorite. I mean, it's Manu. The star power and the playmaking power combined are tough to top. And I think overall, I probably also would take that as my favorite block in the bracket. But the only one I feel like that really gives me pause is Aurora Leshnik from Brut. That was like a crazy block to save the game. Uh, that I have memories of people talking about that in the Discord when it happened. So that's another one that I think maybe has an outside chance, and it certainly is deserving of the big time recognition. I know there's also some love for this Vin Bowie Rhino to like keep the like wrap around sort of point block layout block, like the continue pass when you should be on the mark and you just run it out. I mean, that's heads up. That's very smart. And I think there is a subsection of the populace who will be like, oh, I love that kind of play because it's so cool. But I don't know if it's going to have the same big name cachet. You can check out the link in the description to see the full article if you want to follow along with the plays. So make sure you get your votes in. If you haven't already, and we got a couple rounds to go.
Wait, Keith,
As we
real
get into that,
quick.
any you want to start out, Edward?
Yeah, I just want to say that sometimes in these block of the year, catch of the year, throw of the year brackets, it's about some like detail in the highlight that makes it shine out or makes it shine more. Like there's a like my favorite ultimate highlight of all time. I've mentioned this before. Is there's a Jesse Schaffner chase down block on Sandy Jorgensen where she was playing help defense and she like what makes the highlight is not just the play, but the like combat roll and get up and grab her hat and put it back on her head afterwards. And there's like a couple moments like that in this bracket. So the Vin Bowie one that people have love for, it's a great block on its own, but the killer part is watching the moment he checks over his shoulder to see that there's actually like a threat coming there, and then watching like him kick into that next gear before going in, like he's knowing he has to commit. And then likewise on the women's division side of this bracket, the Valeria Cardenas block as a layout block underneath on Abby Hecko is like not the most, world shattering block I've ever seen. But because of the camera angle and the slow mo, we get the vision of Abby Hecko going from I have this pancake catch to all day to just watching her face fall afterwards. And that's such a great detail and a highlight that makes me like that block so much more.
That's such an Edward take. This little, I'm the same. We are of same mind in like falling in love with these little details. Our producer Lindsay Sue also shouting out Tessa Swinton for another. The Leshnik and Swinton blocks are very similar in that they're both like huge air layouts and they're for the game. They like save the game. So Tessa Swinton also with one of those for New Zealand. So or in New Zealand club for Blueberries. So there's some good stuff to check out in this bracket as you would expect. Probably not my favorite play of all time, but I always got to shout out that guy from Middle Tennessee who just like caught the hip block. Like didn't deflect it and then catch it. He just caught it. This is incredible. Never
And
seen
then the
anything like it.
teammates zoom in.
Yeah, I mean that's just one of the great moments in like esoteric ultimate history. I wish that had happened on a bigger stage. Okay. Let's shift over to President's Day invite. Um, taking a look. Let's start in the women's division on this one since we started in the men's division last time. UBC getting the win at the tournament again over Oregon. Edward, let's start again. Biggest takeaway from Pres Day in the women's division.
UBC clear title favorites in the division at this point. National championship. It's I don't want to jinx them because there's a lot of great competitive teams out there, but based on the way they were playing, it's theirs to lose. They I'm literally in love with the way that their offense flows. I wrote this in a little note in the Discord, but like the transitions and the timing between the thrower catches the throw on the first cut in the lane and looks upfield, and there's like a moment where there's another cutter ready for them in one-on-one space, which is already perfect, and then 90% of the time that cutter cuts deep, either for the wide open deep throw, and they have 6 or 7 players who regularly throw perfect bombs, or even better, that deep cut opens up an even bigger under that wasn't there before. It's poetry in motion, I think. And they're great on the D line too after they get turnovers. It's not just Mika Kurahashi and Madison Ong. They're like 14 deep with unbelievable level players. I think they're so great. I loved watching the Thunderbirds this weekend.
Yeah, I mean Kurahashi and Ong are the big names. They've taken time to establish that, but folks, get familiar with Mushirawa, with Claire Wang, with Ella Bolin, like Brielle Wong, Amelie Marshall. Get to know the names because we're going to be talking about them all year long as this team
Nina Sai,
marches.
Maddie, is it Madison Wauk? They're so deep. They're great.
They're they're super deep. I don't know if they have like. I mean, obviously, a healthy Madison Ong and Mika Kurahashi gives them an elite top end. They have top end. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if that's where I would say this team flexes their muscles the most. It's like when you get to 7 to 10 in the roster, they're kicking your butt in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
cases. So that could be, I think, that their best way to try and get to a title. And I do think that's the
Well,
biggest takeaway from this weekend is that they are now the bulleted number one team.
Well, I mean, we saw that against Oregon. Trout, Wainwright, and Miko Magnan are two of the best players in the division. Cyrus Lingfield is right there. Anna Carlson is playing her way up into like top level conversation. And they didn't have a Keisha Han this weekend, which would have helped their top end. And they could hang with UBC on a lot of those matchups and get the better of them a lot of the time. But Keith, you're absolutely right. It's those that down roster players. It's just relentless from UBC, and they're all on the same page. They're fast. They're strong. They're fearless. It was too much for a very very good Oregon Fugue team. Even
Edward, before I played Ultimate, I was a basketball player and I was a guard, and I prided myself on my passing. So let me hear you with a nice setup here. My key implication from this tournament, UC Santa Cruz is so for real right now. I mean, they looked good at this tournament, and they end up with the 6-2 record. Their only losses coming to Colorado and UBC. The back end of the tournament, they lose to Colorado by 1. They had some close calls with Davis, UCSD, with Utah. So there's stuff to work on, but this feels like a team headed very much in the right direction that has the talent and is going to be able to learn and grow over the course of the season. They were super impressive to me. That is my key takeaway after UBC. And I know you're a big fan of their game.
yeah, what a perfect dish. I'm not going to break the layup here, Keith. Yeah, perfect setup. We are seeing a team that has evolved into a legitimate top 10 team. Like, are we could see them as a top 10 team, and it's because of all the work that they put in last year has continued to build into this year. They took the momentum they established when they made nationals and have taken it to the next level. Last year Rachel Chang came in as the touted rookie, rightly. They'd played for Fury, club season in advance of the college season, and they kind of played as the reset handler, hit the easy throw, and now you see them stepping up and forcing the issue, putting the disc into the end zone, letting their downfield athletes make plays, and once you get that kind of confidence with a thrower, you're seeing it trickle all the way down through the rest of the roster. Everybody wants a piece of it. You're seeing Goodness Norkudu play incredible defense. You're seeing Zane Bird Smith cycle in and out of the handling sets. You're seeing Justine Martinez, who is not a player I knew in advance, but I think she's in her fourth year, running down deep shots and making plays. They've 100% they were on the staircase and they could have kind of taken one step up this year, but instead they've taken 10 steps up this year. I love what I'm seeing out of them.
No, I have no idea what's going to happen in the Southwest right now. The priors were Stanford was out in front. Then it looked like UCSD had taken pole position in the region. UC Santa Barbara was in the mix, but they were without Devin Quinn this weekend, who I believe had an arm injury. Don't know when she's going to be back. Do think she is expected to return to play this season, but it may be a little while for them. So how does that affect their team? Davis also lurking. So this region's going to be fascinating. UCLA had a surprising weekend. UC San Diego B, they're up in here getting wins over UVic. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually BYU who was in that slot, but then they switched partway through the tournament. And so UCSDB right now this is going to mess up the rankings. They're in the rankings in BYU's place and taking BYU's results. But fascinating.
And don't forget Cal Poly Slow.
Team history. No, I shouldn't. I really shouldn't.
They won President's Day qualifiers. I thought we were going to see them in this tournament field. I don't know why they didn't take the spot that they earned, but yeah, they're right up there with everybody else too. The entire region is up, 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 and I guess maybe the other takeaway from that is that Stanford is kind of down. They had a crummy weekend by their standards and by the standards that the rest of the region is setting.
I agree with that. And I understand ringing the alarms for Stanford after what we've seen through two tournaments. Losing to a Devin Quinless UCSB, losing twice to Colorado and the UC San Diego, but those were all close results. I'm holding out hope. Like the signs are still there for a team with the potential to get a lot better, which is what we expect Stanford to do. So I'm not letting go yet of Superfly. But I can't say that it hasn't been a concerning start. It certainly has been much less than we would have expected from Stanford to start the season.
What do you make of,
my under the radar? Go ahead.
You go first. I wanted to stick on the top teams. I just want to hear what you thought of what you saw of Colorado and Oregon.
Yeah. And look, my first thought about Colorado and Oregon is if they're both going to be a Northwest Challenge, they need to do not deny us the rubber match. I mean, these teams have played basically the two best games in the women's division this season. Maybe the two best games in all of College Ultimate this season. If I'm sure I don't know actually how they would feel. Do they want to play each other again? Or they're like, we've already done this twice. I think they're probably itching to play each other again. Great games. You want to play good teams. And if you're going to get a great game, you want to play it again. I think they probably want to play again. Make sure if they're at the same tournament, we're going to see them play again. That is my biggest takeaway from this. Yeah, I mean, they've been playing two great games. Oregon's gotten the win both times. I think both teams feel like works in progress, as they probably should in February, but maybe even more so a Colorado team that's integrating Fiona Cashin, that's still kind of putting the pieces together. I feel like Oregon feels a little more like, they had some injuries that I think impacted their ability to be a complete team. But I think that Colorado looks like they're still figuring out exactly where they want to put. They brought in Cashman's got all the attention, but Emma Smith has also been a nice addition to the team.
Mhm.
So they look like they're still figuring things out. And the fact that they can run with a team as good as Oregon at this point in their process, I think probably speaks highly of them, even though they're 0-2 in that. And so you really think maybe it's a negative sign for Colorado. I think this is a stock up in my mind. This is a buy signal.
Are they 0-2? I think they won the one at Santa Barbara Invite. I want to check that, but I think they're 1-1 right now. But yeah,
You're right. They won. They
I
won. They
like
did. You're right. You're right.
Colorado. I think the only thing I'm waiting to see from them, because I love the roster construction. I love the way, in particular, Fiona Cashin felt like she was getting comfortable with the rest of the team. And that Cleo Phillips step around backhand is like an unstoppable throw. I don't think there's a mark in the division that can keep her from throwing that whenever she wants, which is a red zone weapon that any team would kill to have. But I wonder if Colorado can stop digging themselves a hole at the beginning of games. It would be nice to see them just put somebody away more often.
The talent on this team is really high, but I like Faye. We got to talk about Faye Burdick. I think she's going to be an All-American candidate again this year, but just really picking up where she left off last year. But there is something about this team that gives me like, I feel like I have trouble trusting them in the clutch, and that's not just a last year thing. But I can't decide if that's my priors or not speaking, but I feel like I need to see them go out and get some big wins along the way. Any quick under the radar thoughts from this one?
No, I feel like this tournament was above the radar. Shout out Victoria, put up some strong results despite missing, I think, 4 Team Canada under 24 players. Keep your eye on them heading forward. I don't exactly know what their ceiling is. I don't think anybody does, but they're probably pretty darn good.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my under the radar thing. Was
Damn,
UVic
sorry.
not any standout results, but doing it with without some of their top players is a good sign for them. I guess I'll say Western Washington. They also kind of like mostly did, I think, what you would expect of them. But there's talent there, but they still have some work to do to iron out the kinks. Looks a little unpolished right now, and they'll have to figure that out. Although maybe they won't have to because Northwest will have so many bids, it kind of won't matter what they'll do at regionals. I don't know. They're going to want to compete, and they've obviously got good teams to fight against with Utah and UVic and the like in their region. Prez Day men's division. Oregon getting the win in the men's division over Oregon State. I don't want to say they're a surprise finalist, but I think they are. I will say it. Surprise finalist, even as a top 10 team. But with Colorado and Slow in the field, I think they would have been expected to be the top contenders. But Oregon State makes it there. Notable that they beat Northeastern in the semis. Colorado also in semis. Edward, biggest takeaways from Prez Day in the men's division.
Did anybody want to win this tournament? Oregon goes undefeated, but the first half of that game against Oregon State was a clown show. And expected Colorado to step up and be more fundamental and have some teeth on their D-line offense. You expected Cal Poly Slow to have worked on their depth after the beginning. Oregon State, I thought were going to be less like a Wild West traveling show and more like a composed Nationals team. Washington, I was expecting more consistency in the results, and I'd come away from this tournament thinking that none of these are serious people right now and that they need to get their act together. Is that bad?
Not necessarily. I also struggled to come up with like my like what's the big news here. I think maybe the fact that Oregon was still able to get away with a win playing the way that they were probably says that they're that good. Like, I mean, there obviously were flashes. Their deep game was kind of unbeatable. The combination of athleticism and deep throwing prowess and the threat and pressure they put on teams' defenses just gets them so many easy buckets, and they're going to do that all season. Unless teams are just literally going to give them free unders, I think they're going to be tough to stop from getting behind you. And their throwers have enough power that they can just get it out in front of everybody. So Max Massey was boosting it. Obviously Micah Glass was putting it up. I mean, they've got a couple different players they could put in various positions. Some of them who could do both. When you're looking at Glass taking off or coming under and being the key thrower, so their lack of discipline and execution this weekend did not seem to hamper them, which maybe just says how talented they are. But Oregon State also like great results, but sometimes they're a little hard to watch. You're like it feels unsustainable in some ways. Uh, but so maybe the biggest takeaway is like, hello Northeastern. They come all the way out to the West
Yeah,
Coast and really put together a very impressive performance. Gonna be taking home a nice prize back to New England. I'm sure Brown is thrilled to see it. Very very interesting performance for a Northeastern team who like we suspected would be good, but I don't think this result. This is an upper end result for I think what was expected them going into this tournament.
100%. I think there are a few factors that have let Northeastern kind of take a step forward. The first I want to highlight is Peter Borth has for many years been one of our favorite players to watch. He's been a dominant cutter, super fundamental with his throws and his resets, and able to shake defenders and dunk on plays all the time. But he has stepped up his game as a thrower and like an offensive leader in a way that opens up everybody else. Ben Shamies is out there doing great work. It's always hard early in the season to tell who is who on these Northeastern teams. Guys, please update your roster so we know which numbers correspond to which people. But like they had players, but seeing Borth unlock the field as a thrower, it was the same way. Watching Oregon unlock the field by sending Micah Glass downfield, putting players to succeed in new places is huge. And then they've had some key transfers and step ups. So they've got two other guys on that O line now who can dunk on people in the form of Colton Toon, who's a transfer from BYU, and Jackson McGinnis, who I can't remember if he's in his second or third year, but Jackson McGinnis was posterizing as many people as Borth was throughout the weekend for them downfield. That was huge. And then on the D line, Jack Simmons, coming over as a grad transfer from UNC Charlotte, was a revelation leading that team. He was one of the reasons why UNC Charlotte, where they couldn't quite get there, but they were really competitive. Even earned a bid one year for the Atlantic Coast, and he is helping Northeastern. And I just want to say that I am ready for Northeastern Huskies to make it back to nationals. They have been there with a chance for the last like 3 or 4 years running and been the last team out, and they need to make that nationals field. I am officially on the Huskies sled. So mush, y'all, mush.
I think I could join you. If I think, yeah, over that like 3 year period, like if you added all the 3 seasons up together, they might be the best team that hasn't been at nationals altogether. Um, the rest of this tournament is just such a mess. Our reporter Emmett Holden, for the who's covering for Ulti World, kind of puts it as like nobody's good, and maybe that's because it's February, but yeah, it's just like a mess. Santa Cruz gets went over Cal. Like Washington's putting together kind of a mixed performance. Slow, like they lose to a Colorado team that like barely could beat UVic. What I have trouble finding a thread to really pull on out of the rest of this tournament, other than that the mid tier teams in this tournament were able to compete with the top tier teams, and I've there's not a lot I feel like that I can say like definitively coming out of this event.
No, I can't either. I think Colorado making their debut was maybe the most interesting team to watch because it was their first time out on the field, and it gives them a baseline. And right now, their baseline is an incredibly potent offense. Tobias Brooks looks like one of the best, if not the best, overall offensive player in Ultimate right now. And Ryan Shigley and Nandaman Fink look awesome next to him. Curtis Patgross was out there making plays. Um, Tucker Kalmus is like doing a really nice job in kind of a support role around those guys, but they look really competent on offense, and they were clearly running through two, different D lines. Uh, Zeke Thorson was out. Elliot Hawkins was getting his feet wet with his, first big play. They had, Joe Michaud and Dan Williams out there doing work, but they couldn't quite put together who. I don't think they were trying to like figure out who their D1 line was, but their defensive offense was pretty bad and inconsistent on defense as well. I think Emmett pointed out that in their Cal Poly slow win, neither team got a block. And you see it finishing 13-12. And so I'm really interested between now and Smoky what Colorado do to get breaks. Their offense is good. The defense needs to step up in a few different ways. So that's the measuring stick I'm looking at going forward.
Any under the radar story from this tournament for you?
I think that the big under the radar story is what you already mentioned, that after having a really disappointing Santa Barbara invite, UC Santa Cruz appear to be back on track and a threat in the Southwest. The fact that they can beat Cal, and they've proven that now. And this is a Cal team with, Dexter Clyburn and Bernie Wang out of Columbia had an awesome tournament for them apparently. And Emmett, our reporter, was gushing over Carter Langford. I haven't watched the tape yet on Cal from this weekend, but apparently they're great. So the fact that Santa Cruz could get that win and prove they can do it means that regardless of what the bid situation is in the Southwest, it's going to be a lively event, and they've now played their way back into conversation for actual nationals contention for the first time since 2023.
Very interesting Prez Day, an interesting weekend overall, kind of shaking up the college landscape a bit at the top and in the middle. So I'm looking forward to now. It feels like we're really in the throes of the college season now that basically every top level team has played. There are a couple of events coming up this weekend. We will look at last weekend's picks, see how we stacked up against the subscribers, Charlie and I, not Edward and I, although we'll look forward in this weekend to make some quick picks for some of the events going on. At Queen City Tune-Up, nobody got the champion. No surprise. Tufts getting the win. Nobody picked Tufts to even make the final. But if you had Carleton over UNC, like me and the subs did, you get points over Charlie, who had Vermont winning the whole thing. We all had UNC in the final getting the win, so we'll all take home the points for that. Nobody had South Carolina. At Prez Day, everybody had UBC winning the women's division, so we get the points for that. But only Charlie had Oregon in the final. And in the men's division, Charlie and I had Oregon winning. The subs had Colorado. So Charlie and I get the points for that. And you can see the overall standings. The subs still trailing, and Charlie with a narrow lead over me. Edward, you want to help me close that gap this weekend?
Oh, if anybody can bring Charlie down, it's me.
All right. So I want to get through these pretty quickly. We don't have full formats, I think, for these two tournaments, Commonwealth Cup and Eastern's qualifier. We mostly just kind of have team lists. So I think maybe there's some chance that the formats are changing for weather. So something to keep an eye on. But the sub picks are in. So we can start at Commonwealth Cup, where the two teams I think are going to be Vermont and UPenn will be in attendance, but some other ranked teams in the likes of Notre Dame will be there. Georgia Tech will be there. We've also got teams like American making their debut, Ohio State. There's a few other schools in Cornell getting their first run. MIT Spite, we talked about them earlier. So we'll see some other teams, mostly like AC and New England teams in the mix there. Edward, I think you've had a chance to see the team list. Who are your picks for the finals for the winner here?
I won't be cute with this on the winter front. I'm picking Vermont Ruckus to win it. Against them in the final, the obvious pick is UPenn Venus, but Charlie hates making the obvious pick. So I'm going to say Georgia Tech Rec coming out of the Tier 2, defeating American Dirty Ladies in semis. Uh, yeah, Rec between McKenna Boncaron and Katie Sanders and Eva Flom, they got a sneaky good team. So I think they will be stepping up to be the lunch meat for Vermont in the final.
I saw that coming from a mile away. I'll take Vermont over UPenn, which the subscribers are doing as well. And I think American's the sleeper more than Georgia Tech, but I appreciate that you even gave American the shout out along the way. How about over at Eastern's qualifier? Team list for this one that we last saw includes South Carolina, NC State, Maryland, UNC Wilmington, William and Mary, McGill coming down, Auburn. I hadn't clarified if Purdue and Virginia Tech were going to be in the field. Duke, Emory, Ohio State, UVA, UNC Wilmington, JMU. Dartmouth, a lot to pick from. A lot of AC that I think will be many of the top seeds at the tournament. Who do you like?
I like Ben Greenberg, and I hear people like Marcus Lee a lot. I haven't watched him yet, rookie for William and Mary. So I'm going William and Mary on the strength of these two. Second pick, McGill Mutt, another New England team traveling and doing some good strength bid points work. I think they're going to make the final. And give me William and Mary to win.
Wow, look, I was impressed with Marcus Lee from what I saw on the stream at Green City Tune Up, and I've certainly seen him play before. Just add him to the growing list of first year players who have been very strong. But that's pretty bold, I'd say. After South Carolina just made the final at QCTU, the subscribers, which Eton made the picks for the subscribers this weekend. He's got Maryland in the final, so back on the hype train for the Space Bastards, and they're taking on NC State, with NC State taking the title. I'm also going to take NC State to win the tournament, and I'll have them doing it over South Carolina. I thought NC State looked pretty good at Queen State Tune-Up, so I think that they can come out. The back-to-back is tough, but it was a weird weekend. Maybe that ended up making the work a little lighter. They didn't have to travel very much, so maybe it'll be okay for them. I'm surprised you resisted the siren song of Henry Lassard, a player I know you're a big fan of, but I know you like to mix it up. So William and Mary for Edward, NC State for me and the subscribers. Before we get out of here, of course, we got to touch on our mailbag question of the week. This one comes in from EMF. Been a lot of chatter about players who got injured or dropped off the map and nostalgia for them recently. Who's your top what if players? Players that stopped playing early in their career to do something else, or kind of disappeared from the map, who looked like they could have been superstars. Who's your big what ifs?
Okay, I got three names for you, and I'm not going to go with the obvious ones. One I mentioned in the Discord, and that was, I think, one of the impetuses behind EMS question. And this is Julia Kwasnik, who used to play for UC Santa Barbara. I don't think she's played anywhere since 2021. If you want to talk about players with like the greatest highlight reels you can make of all time, I mean, Julia Kwasnik's college play was right up there. Absolutely incredible defender, and just went after it, and I loved it. And then I've got two deeper cuts for you, Keith, and I want to get these in before you can say them. So number one, Stanford's Courtney Gegg back in the day. Courtney Gegg, where did you go? You were like the best
That's a good
player at
pull.
college nationals. Led what did she win a title for Stanford? Did they come up short in the final? Either way, Courtney Gegg was awesome, and I don't think she's played any club anywhere ever. And then second is a much deeper cut from my own neck of the woods. Peter Dempsey was an unbelievable
Oh,
player
that's a
for
great
Georgia
one.
back in the day, and while he was in college, played 3 seasons with Chain, and then just dropped. He just wanted to go back to his home in Alabama and just build a career, and power to him. But That is a huge what if. Peter Dempsey could have set the world on fire.
That is it. The kids don't know Dempsey, man. He was very good. Geg is a great pull. Those are some great picks. I'll try and do some cross generational stuff, perhaps. So I don't just like lean back on. I think like the type of person that's in our Discord, slightly older crowd, like not the current college crowd, would be like obvious answers are some of the like next gen guys like Aaron Hahn and Will Driscoll, guys who kind of fell off the map and seemed like they were on their way to being top level players. A player who didn't like completely fall off the map, but I don't think played with the same uh level of like fervor, like wasn't so engaged that she continued to grow on her path, was Haley Walrus for me. Kind of briefly like reappeared with Schwa, but like, not somebody who was like playing year in and year out. Mira Donaldson, speaking on the Northwest, another one, went to become a real grown up and like work in the medical field. Was a absolute monster in college. Ann Worth was somebody said in the Discord, Sad Town, but obviously I have noted Ann Worth stand, so I gotta shout out Ann Worth, who's just like one of the best college players to do it. Wish we had gotten to see the full takeoff for her club career. And then if I'm gonna go back to like my own personal life answers, I'm gonna shout out a high school teammate, Eldon Creer. Eldon was the best dunker on the Paideia basketball team and got convinced to play Ultimate. And 2 years later, made the Junior Worlds team. Just like really great length. So he was like a disgusting mark. Just people had so much trouble throwing around him. And then he could roof basically anybody. And then he went to, I think, Barry, and they didn't really have a team. And so he didn't keep playing. And he did, I remember he reappeared briefly. He got invited to Chain Tryouts and reappeared. And like Chain was convinced they were going to like reintegrate him back to Ultimate. And I heard he was just absolutely crushing at tryouts and then decided not to play. And so that was like his ticket, but didn't come back. So
Classic.
shout out
Classic.
Eldon Creer. He was
Eldon,
a
come
really
back.
beast in high school.
Eldon, we need you.
Everybody has those phantoms, those that they've seen in their career, those players who like could have been. I feel like everybody's played against somebody and they're like, that person disappeared after high school or college and could have been so good. But we'll never know now. I see them coming in the chat. Michaela Meester, Nathan Vickroy, Nathan White. So a lot of Nathans.
Nathan Vickroy is playing, y'all. He played
for the Savannah. Is he in the UFA? He was for a little while.
But he played club this year for the 6th best Southeast team in mixed. So Vickroy's there. It wasn't good enough, y'all.
What was the guy? What was the handler from the UCF teams that were really the like Jeremy Langdon teams? Oh my God. He threw one of the best Hawks I'd ever seen at College Ultimate against Minnesota. I can't remember his name. It's getting away from me. Someone said Brian Hereford in the chat. Is it Brian Hereford? I felt like he played. I mean, he was obviously sick, but Joe Freund in the chat. Somebody remembers that UCF handler's name. I suddenly can't remember, but I'm sure it'll get pulled out somewhere. That's gonna do it though for this episode of Deep Look. Make sure if you didn't hit that thumbs up, make sure you don't end up on the highlight reel in the bad way. Give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. We've got game recaps coming out. We'll have some analysis content coming your way, but definitely want to make sure you're subscribed to YouTube so you don't miss out on any of the good stuff. Sub bonus, we will be doing it live in Discord at some point. Not going to get to it right now, but and we're not going to be talking about the best top ends. We're going to find the best top 3 in all of College Ultimate. Which teams, their best 3 players are going to be the best. That's what we'll be talking about and chewing on when we get the chance. So stay tuned for that in the Discord. We will tag you all and let you know when we will be recording live, and we will see you there. But for Edward Stevens, I'm Keith Rayner, signing off for Deep Look. We will catch you next week.
We need more Mr. Beast and Kevin Hart.